with you, Chief?
Great, thank you. Thanks for having me on the show tonight. I was with you a few years ago, and it was a lot of fun, so I'm happy to be back. I grew up in Plummer, Minnesota, and of course you know where that is, right?
No. I was going to fake it, but I couldn't pull it off.
It's up in the northwestern corner of the state. It's up near Thief River Falls, if you have a sense
Right.
of where that is. So it's a real small town, 270 people, including my mom and dad live there. So I
Wow.
come from a very small place.
Now it's 269 because you left.
Well, we're waiting to see what the census shows. I don't think there'll be a lot of growth up there. But anyway, I went to college at the University of Minnesota Morris. I went to law school at Georgetown in Washington, D.C., so that was a big culture shock change for me. There were many more people in my law school class than in my hometown.
I think we figured this out last time you were here. I went to Morris as well.
You did?
Yes, and I got married
I
in
didn't
Morris at
remember
Pomme
that.
de Terre Park. You remember Pomme
Lovely,
de Terre.
yes, of course I do.
That was my undergrad.
Yeah, no, it's a wonderful place.
It is.
For people out there watching, if you haven't decided where to go to college, go to the University of Minnesota Morris.
Isn't it
It's
one
a
of the
great
highest
place.
rated liberal arts colleges in the state, if not the Midwest?
They do very well, yes. Anyway, so then I started practicing law in Washington, D.C., and then I did that for about 7 years at a big law firm out there. I came home to Minnesota in 1993, and I was a lawyer for the U of M for 11 years doing lawsuits for the university. And then I was a prosecutor in Senator, now Senator, then Hennepin County Attorney. I was a prosecutor in her office. I was on the trial court briefly. And then I was appointed to the Minnesota Supreme Court January of '06, elected to the court in the 2008 election, and then appointed Chief Justice effective July 1st of last year.
And that's what I want to hear more and talk more about tonight. That's great. But before we move on, what did you practice in D.C.? What kind of law?
Commercial litigation, lawsuits for businesses.
And then for the university was after
Whatever
that?
kind of lawsuit you can imagine, the university has. I mean, it's a real variety of things. They're the second largest landholder in the state and the second largest employer in the state, and sometimes they have disputes with students, and sometimes there are business-related disputes, and so it's a real big variety of things.
Great. And Justice Strauss, how did you what's your path?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate the invitation. I grew up in Wichita, was born and grew up in Wichita, Kansas. Spent about the first 18 years of my life in Wichita, and then went off to the University of Kansas for my undergraduate degree. And then we decided that we liked being Jayhawks so much that we stuck around, and my wife got a master's in social work, and I got a law degree and an MBA. So we stayed there another few years. And then I decided, I'd been in Kansas for about 24 years, and it was time to venture out and see some new places. And we spent time all around the country. Right out of law school, my first clerkship was in the Ninth Circuit, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit in Reno, Nevada. And then we moved to Alexandria, Virginia, and I spent a year with the Fourth Circuit. And then I went to a Washington, D.C. law firm and worked doing white-collar criminal work and appellate litigation.
White-collar defense?
White-collar defense.
Wow.
And then I had the great opportunity to clerk for the United States Supreme Court in 2002. And then we decided we had seen just about every part of the country, the West, the East, but we had not seen the South yet. And so we went to the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
Wow.
And I spent a year down there on a fellowship teaching at the University of Alabama. And then my wife decided she really wanted to come back to the Midwest, and I did too. And we moved back to Minnesota when the University of Minnesota Law School offered me a job. Starting in 2004, we decided we wanted to come to Minnesota and teach. And I spent 6 years teaching law students at the University of Minnesota from 2004 until 2010, until Governor Pawlenty appointed me effective July 1st, 2010 to the Minnesota Supreme Court.
So tell us what did you teach in law school?
Well, I taught a variety of things. I taught a class on constitutional law. I taught criminal law. I taught in the area of law and politics. I taught, what else did I teach? Federal courts, jurisdiction and things like that. And then I taught several seminars on the United States Supreme Court and constitutional law more generally.
And how did that prepare you for being a justice of the Minnesota Supreme Court? What do you think? I mean, it's almost a year. We're at 10 months, I think.
It's true. It's true. I would say this. I'm not sure that anything prepares you to be be a justice of
Fair
the
enough.
Minnesota Supreme Court. The stakes are incredibly high. You know, you're talking about people's lives in one way or another. You've got to realize that there's real people there with real problems. And so, you know, I thought I was prepared coming in, but when you get in there, you've really got to learn on the job, and it's sort of, you know, trial by fire. But with that said, I do think particularly the time I spent clerking, and to a lesser extent the time I spent teaching, really helped prepare me. One of the things you really have to do as a Supreme Court justice is think critically about the cases that come before you, and that, you know, the life experiences, the career experiences I had have enabled me to do that, and so I think that's made the job a little bit easier transition.
Chief, you were a trial court judge for a period of time. And then you were a justice, and now you're chief. Did that prepare you any better? I mean, isn't it sort of like I'm wondering if it's trial by fire no matter what. Is that true, or what do you think?
Well, I think that whenever you take a new job, there's always a learning curve, and it's a new job to you. So of course you're going to
Right.
have to learn how to do it. But I mean, having said that, I do think that my time on the trial court, albeit very brief, did serve me well, and is an important part of my background and experience. And certainly, my time as an associate justice, I think, has helped me transition into the job of Chief Justice, because the things that you do as an associate justice, you also do as Chief Justice. You just do less of those things because you have other things to do.
You know,
So-
from the trial court perspective, we always kind of watch and see who gets appointed, and we'll grumble, they don't have any trial court experience. How are they going to know what we do?
Yeah.